body other than the face itself.
There are, in fact, 4 different types of, what we think of as Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
Very wide, pronounced nose. There was also a very ominous odor.
Phase 1 is to identify opportunities. I walked into a small clearing in less than 10-15 feet away from this enormous creature, and it scared the living hell out of me. Phase 2 is conducting investigations both of witnesses and locations. The size of the thing, it was, 4 or 5 feet across the shoulders. Phase 3 is profiling research areas, what's there, how they move, feeding, things like that. About 8 feet tall, I guessed around 800 pounds. It was massive. I had no idea that anything like that existed. Phase 4 is create an intercept plan. I decided to shoot in the air to see if maybe it would scare it off. Phase 5 is the intercept and resolve the issue phase. It didn't do anything, didn't react, and then I heard a noise from my right rear, and from out behind some brush come another one and walked over by the first one. That's when I decided to do what the dog did. I took off running. Welcome to Witness of the Unknown. Hello everyone. I'm doing something a little different tonight. I have Don in Maine and Nate in Alabama with me this evening. And for those who don't know either of these gentlemen, I've done recordings with both. Don quite a few times. I don't even know, Don, how many times we've recorded. So if you wanna know their full story, look on my YouTube page, and those interviews are up there, and you can get the full story of what's going on with both Don and Nate. It's one of them. For Don, it's Bigfoot in Maine, and for Nate, it's Bigfoot in Alabama. So what I have here tonight with these guys is the two of you have been in quite a bit of contact, and you've told me that the situations in your respective areas are very similar to one another. So what I'd kind of like you two to do, both of you to do, is maybe we'll do a discussion about the similarities of what's going on. It's kind of a unique situation having two eyewitnesses in different parts of the country with very similar things currently going on in both locations. So what we'll do to begin with is I'll have each of you just kind of give a quick kind of a flyover of what's happening in your area and has happened, and then I'll have the two of you just sort of go back and forth and talk about the similarities. So fellas, how are you tonight?
Good. Well, how you guys doing? How you doing, Nate?
Very well. Very well, Don. How about you?
Good. Doing good.
So Don, we'll start with you. Give us kind of a brief overview of what's been going on and what's currently happening there in Maine.
Okay, the whole story from the beginning, or just this past couple of years?
I'll leave that up to you.
Okay. Well, I initially had my first encounter here back in 2016 now. But they've always been here. They've always been here. I always knew I had something going on in the woods, but it wasn't until 2016 or something I had my sighting. And ever since then, it's just been crazy. It really has been. They have been hanging around my house. Now, the one thing I was going to say about me and Nate, both our groups are very non-aggressive. And I think because of that, they show a lot of similarities in their behavior. But this year has been different vocals-wise. Very quiet this year. Nothing like last year where I was getting vocals every night and loud vocals. This year, they just went quiet. I could still hear them out there. I could still hear them in the beginning of the night, and I could still hear them, at the end of the night, early in the morning, coming back to their areas. But boy, did they stay quiet out there. I really thought they were gone. But I was going out there, and I'd tap sticks or make noises out there, and they would respond just to let me know that they were up on the hill. Mm-hmm. And those were the only sounds that I was hearing. At nighttime, it just got quiet. Whenever they did the owl, they were farther away than they have been the previous few years. I did still find bones around my house. And then in September, the one that was always around my house just was gone. I couldn't pick him up on the recorder anymore. He was just gone. So I noticed this, a few weeks of this, he was just not here. I could not hear anything walking around on the recorders. So I would go up into the woods at night, and I would do a couple calls or make some sound, and I could hear him in the distance. And boy, he would come into this area quick. So he was still in the general area, but just not at my house anymore.
How many individuals do you think are in that group?
3 that I know of. I was thinking there was 4 there a couple of years ago, because I thought I heard 4 out there, but everything is pointing to 3.
So for people listening, now you've had tracks right in your driveway. They're coming up close to your home, or have been. Lots of vocals. You're seeing vegetation being messed with. And you put the recorders out, so they were actually coming up, not messing with the recorder, but actually being aware of it and making audible noises there.
Right. I'm not sure if they knew what the recorder was, but they definitely knew it was there. I had it in a plastic bag in rice, and I would wrap the microphone wire around the recorder and just tie it to a branch about 6-7 feet up in the air. Mm-hmm. And I would stay there. And you could always hear something come into that area as soon as I left. You could hear it come in every single night within anywhere from 4 minutes to 30 minutes. You could hear some walk right in, and it would just stay there all night. You could just hear it there all night. Right. It would be in the area, breaking branches, and when it walked, you could tell it was walking on leaves, but every once in a while it would step on a larger branch, and you would hear the snap. So you knew whatever it was had weight to it. Mm-hmm. And it had no problem making noise. That's another thing. It had no problem walking through the brush, snapping branches, making all kinds of noise up here.
Like it didn't care.
It really didn't, right. Now, that all seemed to stop this year. Like, it was very quiet with the vocals this year. And then in September, I noticed he was just gone. He just wasn't out there. Mm-hmm. Something I did notice that I just noticed about a month ago is I have no acorns this year. The 2 previous years, my oak trees, an abundance of acorns because we were going through a drought. Yeah. So the tree goes into a survival mode, and it starts putting out acorn seed. Well, this year, 0 acorns in the trees. No acorns. Mm-hmm. It just, because we had plenty of rain this year, the trees went back into a growth mode, and they just put out all kinds of new growth. But when that one was hanging out around here for the previous couple of years, in the feces I found last year, it was loaded with acorns. So I think he was eating a lot of acorns while he was hanging out here watching me. Yeah. And then this year there was no acorns, and right in September he left. Now, a mile down the road, you got acorns.
Oh, so there might be something, just a personal preference. He likes those, so he's shifted his focus a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking that because I could always hear him crunching acorns on the recording. He was always eating nuts. I could hear something being crunched. I assumed it was nuts, but it just this year when they disappeared. Now, when the snow came in a few nights ago. Now I've always heard them, even though they weren't here. I could hear them on the recorder in the distance. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, you'd hear them up close, but only right after sundown. And then right before sun up, you could hear them close to the recorder, and they would do either a moan, or they would do that scream that they do, or they do the owls. Now, the response I was getting, I was going up there tapping sticks, letting them know I was in the area, and I would get a scream and the hoots. And that was consistent all of this year. That's what they responded with me all this year. Right. Even earlier in the spring when I told you I put the piece of grass between my thumbs and I made the noise with the grass, that thing came down off the hill, crossed the road, got across from my house, and did the scream and the hoot. Mm-hmm. That was in the June or July that happened. And that vocal stayed consistent all year. Whenever they were directing it towards me, it was a scream and then a couple hoots.
Nate, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to get Nate in here, and then we'll have you two go back and forth. But Nate, give us an overview of what's been going on there in Alabama.
Well, as you know, and anybody that has heard before, I've been messing around with these things since about 86. When I had my first encounter, and I was just a kid. I was 17, and I didn't. Now it was over a period of a night and a day, and that night, and I believe it was two different creatures. I got a little aggression, and a couple of bluff charges, and then the next day, the creature that I actually saw was pretty docile, pretty laid back. He showed me no aggression, at no way did he make me feel like I was at any time in any danger. But he was very curious. He followed me for, I know, and I didn't have a watch, but I know he followed me 2 hours. And he kept his distance. He never hid from me. He never gave me any reason to feel like I was in danger. But it was just pretty, it was a pretty docile, pretty laid back. If anybody has to have an encounter, that's the one you want. Because and I think it sort of formed the way I look at these creatures even now. Not that I know they're dangerous. They can be very, very dangerous, but by the same token, I don't spend a lot of time being afraid of them. And what we have, I've had the same behavior here, like Don's been saying, a pretty non-aggressive behavior here since day one. And in the last year, we've had a little more, I'm not going to say a bad kind of aggression, but they've been getting closer to humans, and that's something they've never done here before. And you're familiar with the situation at the Malones, where they were getting entirely too close. Mm-hmm. I have a area behind my daughter-in-law's, or my stepdaughter's house, right over across the road here, that it's about a 250-yard stretch of woods that goes to the rim of this valley. And they live, from what I've got a group that lives in this valley. When I go down to the end of this valley, I see no tree breaks. I see very little markers of any kind. But once you come up out of that valley to the rim, you start seeing a lot of tree breaks. That's the barrier between them and the humans. But I'm not altogether certain that that I don't have two groups here now. Mm-hmm. Because of we don't have the rocky, hard ground that we have. It's hard to get a usable print. It's hard to get a print that you can cast and use that for identification. So my means of identification most of the time is behavior. Mm-hmm. If I'm seeing the same things, I relate it to the same creatures. Some of the behavior that I've had in the last year is completely different from what I'm used to. And in the last month, I'm going to say a month, it could be 6 weeks, a friend of mine's mother, her husband passed away. She's in her 70s, and it made it where she couldn't sleep good at night since she lost her husband. So sometimes at night at like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, she's out on her back porch drinking coffee. And something starts screaming at her from the wood line. Or she called it a roar. Now we went over there. She called the other night, and I was there in, I guess, maybe 15 minutes. And we did get, I've got it on a voice recorder, but there's a lot of trash. I got a parabolic ear, and there's a lot of trash in it that's going to have to be cleaned up. I'm going to get it to Don and let him clean it up for me. But I've got growls and screams. The growls are very close. The growls are probably 50 to 75 feet or closer from where we were standing. And there was something happened there last night. She cleaned her cat litter box out. She was sick, so she cleaned her cat box out, put it in a bag, and just opened the back door and threw it out on the porch. She heard something on her porch last night. She got up this morning, the cat litter bag is gone. Nothing got it and tore it up. There's nothing to do with the cat litter bag left there at all. It's just gone. So I went over tonight after the ball game and looked for some tracks. But it rained hard in the wee hours of the morning this morning, so anything that was there is pretty well gone. And the other night, my grandson and I went across the road from his house, which is on the south end of this valley. He don't live in the valley. He lives up on the mountain, but it's on the south end. And we went across the road from his house. They've logged off a bunch of timber there. And I could have choked him to death. We walked around the edge of this field, running thermal, because we're both out of thermal. And we got to this one corner, and he just turned and started across the field the other way. I said, well, let's go on down this way. He said, no, we need to go back this way. So we went back the other way, and I came around, and there was I had my thermal on black hot, and there was a big clump. You know how after they log something off and they push up the mess in a pile, it'll just be it'd be growed up bushes. Mm-hmm. In those growed up bushes, and they were all showing up white on the thermal. There was 2 black forms in there. One, you could see a shoulder, a head, and almost back down to the other shoulder with foliage in front of it. About 2 feet over and probably a foot shorter, you could see almost the same form, except you could see both shoulders and the head. And I'm 25 feet from this. And I'm sitting there with my thermal, and I stand there probably 5 or 6 minutes watching. I never got a sound, and neither one of them ever moved. So I've decided that ain't nothing. It's just, it's just a hot spot in the... So I turned around and started walking up to where he was at, my grandson. And I turned around and panned back that way with the thermal, and they were gone. So I thought, I've just got the wrong angle. I've come up on the hill, now I can't see. So I walked back down to where I was at, and sure enough, they were gone. No. So I told him what had happened. And he said, well, I guess I did see that then. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, when we was right over there, I saw something, looked like something peeping out from behind a tree, and it would peep out and go back, and peep out and go back. And he said, I watched it for a minute. And what it was, he watched it, and he got scared. And that's when he turned to go across the field the other way. Mm-hmm. And he's a skeptic, and he don't want to admit anything about Bigfoot. So he didn't want to tell me. And then we get up there, and I told him, I said, at least give me a chance to see it.
Well, fellas, let's go ahead and kick this off. Let me throw a couple things out there that I've noticed just the two of you talking. Both of you groups, both of you, your areas seem to have 2 groups. And I didn't ask Nate, but and I know Don, you've told me before that one group is more aggressive than the other. You both see behavior changes. There's lots of vocals of many different kinds. And Don, you had logging in your area too, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's been going on for about 2 years now.
Okay. Well, fellas,
It really ramped up about a year ago, but yeah,
those are things that just really jumped out at me. So I'm going to let the two of you sort of, and I know you've been talking a lot, but I think people would really like to hear you compare what's going on in your respective areas.
One thing I think is that we both had a group living close to our house, and these creatures got a chance to check us out first before we saw them. And I think they just knew that I was not going to be a threat to them. I don't know. Maybe they just saw me the way I treat animals out here. You know, I don't know. Maybe they just knew that I wasn't going to be the threat. And because they never really showed me any aggression, only that first couple weeks after I saw them, and the aggression was only crashing through the woods to the wood line, and then they would just stop. I never got growls. A friend of mine got growled at, but I never got growled at. And when I was talking... Oh, go ahead, Nate.
I tend, like you're saying, a friend of yours got growled. I tend to get a different response when I'm by myself.
Yes.
As opposed to when I have somebody with me. Jay and I went down into the valley and camped out. My wife, Jay's son, and myself went down in there and camped out. And we got thermal on, there's a sinkhole. And it's just like the earth has fell out into a 135-foot deep hole. And down in the bottom is a 35-foot deep crack. And if you go down into that crack, you walk right back into the side of the mountain where there's an underground river and miles of tunnels. And at 3 o'clock that morning, we got something on thermal, came out of that hole, out of that crack, and was climbing hand over foot up the side of this sinkhole.
Right. Yeah, you were telling me about that a couple of weeks ago.
We got really good thermal on it. And then the next day we looked at the same spot, and where it was standing, where we got the best thermal, it had to be better than 7 feet. Where the bottom of the heat signature is to the top, it was 7 feet or more.
Huh.
So he was a big boy.
When me and Nate, we first started talking, I was sending you some vocals, and they were the scream and the hoot vocals. And did you say you had heard something very similar to that?
Very similar. And the owl calls, the first vocalizations I heard was owl calls.
Yeah, that's the first thing I heard too. Now, see, it's funny because I don't hear these anywhere else. I don't hear the scream hoots anywhere else. They could be out there, but I've been looking online and listening to recordings. And have you ever heard of that, Will? That the scream and the hoot, which is pretty consistent around here.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You have? Okay. But that's something that we have in common there is the vocals. The vocals are very similar. They're very non-aggressive.
I've used the vocals. I've used the vocals that you sent me.
Yeah.
For identification to witnesses around here. I let them hear them, and yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah, and that's repeatedly. That is the answer I get. Now, I know in one of my groups, I know there's at least 4 members. Because at the Malone's house one night while they were going on vacation, and my wife and I were taking care of their dogs, I had one huffing behind the house. It sounded like a bunch of monkeys at the end of the house. One quiet but throwing things at me in front of the house. And one far off like it was the fact of the matter. It made the scream. And when it made the scream, the other 3 moved away from the house back down through the woods. Like it called them back. So, yeah, the vocalizations you sent me are exactly what I'm getting here.
Okay. Now, with that other group there, like where I am here, the non-aggressive or the group that's closer to my house, I hear more vocals from them than I do the group in the back that it seems more aggressive. Is that something similar to you have?
Yes. Now, I have heard some vocalizations at the Malones, But I get vocalizations from the non-aggressive group that lives in the valley regularly when I go out to feed I've got a lot of cats. Everybody in the country throws all cats out here. And when I go out to feed my cats, I hear them regular. I hear a scream, a very violent sounding scream. Sounds like somebody being murdered. I mean, it sounds like somebody that is in serious pain. I heard this the other night, and I have a recording with it, but it's got a lot of trash on it too. This parabolic ear is a good thing, but if there's any traffic noise within 4 or 5 miles or anything like that, it gets it. But the other night, there's a guy that he's kindly on my team part-time, which most time it's mostly me, Jay, and my wife, but I got some guys that go with us from time to time. This guy has got some hounds down here at this old barn next door to me where my wife had her first encounter. And I heard the screaming down the other side of this barn, and these hounds were pitching a fit. All the dogs in the neighborhood were pitching a fit. So I came in and got my parabolic ear and went back out and started recording the scream. And as it got closer to this barn, I've got it right there at the barn, growling at those hounds, and the hounds quit barking. They were whimpering. Now, it did not break in on the hounds. It didn't harm them in any way. But it was right there where they were, growling at them. And I've got that on recording that we got to clean up.
Okay. Well, we'll get to talk about that at some other point. But do you remember any other similarities that we have? I think that the group that I have close living to me is definitely a smaller in stature than the group in the back. I have a beaver trapper that told me about a 22-inch print out there that he measured out there, and then he told me he had the picture, but when I went back to get him and to get the picture from him, he just didn't want to talk about it anymore. He said that everyone told him he was crazy, so he didn't want to talk about it anymore, but he told me it was a 22-inch print. Now, that's definitely a bigger group, I think, physically bigger in the back, and then the group closer to me is definitely smaller in stature because the footprints.
Yeah, according
to the ones up at the Malones have, and I wear a 13, so probably with my boot on and everything, my foot probably 15 inch, with the sole of my boot. And the tracks that I have got up at the Malones have been around 15 inches. The first track that I ever found around here, I found across the road between here and the bluff where you go off into the valley. It was a really big print. It was better than 24 inches. It was a big print.
Do you think
it was sort of strange? It had a narrow heel and wide.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that's from the group closest to you?
Well, yeah, I do. I think that's from the group that lives in the valley. I think they're bigger.
Hey, fellas, just a quick interject for listeners. John Napier, who was an English anthropologist back in the 60s, came up with a formula to calculate height based on foot dimensions. The 22-inch print would have been a 12-foot individual. 15-inch track gives us an 8-foot individual. So just a couple of pieces of interesting information there.
Okay.
That I knew there had to be some kind of equation for it. I didn't know what it was, but I sort of felt like there should be.
Right.
Yeah, his calculation was you measure the overall foot length and then multiply that times 6.6, and then it gives you the total number of inches, and then you divide that by 12, and it gives you the number of feet.
Okay. That's interesting. That's useful. The one my wife saw when we were coming out of the valley on the 4-wheeler that day, it was squatted down beside the trail and just sat there and watched us go by, and it was close enough it could have reached out and touched us.
Right.
and it was a big guy. It was. She said it was. She said it could have been a stump, but she said if it was broke off at about 5 feet, and it's squatting down. And when we went back in 2 days later, there was no stump where she saw it.
Right.
And she said she thought she saw it turn its head when we went by, but she said, I can't be sure because it was almost dark, and we had been down in there a little longer than we thought than we planned to. And she saw it, let's say, squatted beside the trail when we came out. And she described the way it was squatted, said it was squatted down with its knees pointed to the outside and its arms straight down between its front legs. And she said she thought she saw its head turn, but she wasn't sure unless when we went back, there wasn't a stump there in that place. So I feel like she saw what she thought she was seeing.
Yeah, no, didn't know when we were doesn't your group leave the area, or does it stay there all the time?
Well, my group used to. The only time that I would get anything out of them was in the fall of the year.
Okay.
Now, for the last...
That was another thing I noticed, too, that, yeah, most of our activity, even though they were around all the time, they got very active in the fall with locals and moving around.
It has definitely ramped up in the last... Well, I've had more activity in the last year than I ever have, but it's ramped up a lot in the last 2 months.
I have a question, fellas.
Okay.
You know, you have more information about the groups that are closer to your area, to where you're living and stuff. Right. What about the other groups, the more aggressive ones that seem to be out? Do you get much from those particular individuals? Do they interact with the other group, people in the area that you know of, or I mean, just kind of? I was curious about that.
The other group behind the group closest to me has a very small area where they roam and hunt. The group in the back has a very large area. I mean, there could be another group beyond them, but I know that there is sightings for 20 miles through the woods from right behind my house to this place called Fry Mountain. And it's a good distance away. As the crow flies, it's probably 6-7 miles, but beyond it, there's sightings, but they all seem to center around that Fry Mountain area. And the group behind me has a clear path to go back and forth. It has a very large area, and I think a few years ago, a bus driver saw one step out one winter. This was in 2007. And she saw this creature step out and saw her in the school bus, and it turned right back into the woods. Well, she went back with her husband, and they followed it, and her neighbor and brother, but they followed it for 10 miles. And it ended up getting up on a game trail, and then they lost its trail. But where she followed it to was right to the Fry Mountain area. I think it's a very large area out there that nobody goes, and it'd definitely be easier for a larger group or even larger creatures to live out in that area. But it's such a big area. Well, I've gone out there many times looking, and it's hard to find evidence out there. I just hear it from sightings and other people. I haven't found much out there. But I do get bad feelings out there. Like when I'm out there alone sometimes, I don't feel good out there at all in some areas where I just have to leave. But I don't usually get that with my group.
Do you, I have a curious, before we get into Nate, just a quick question. Do you feel that the group closer to your house or the one out farther is more dominant than the other one?
The one out further.
Is more dominant than your group?
Yes, I get the feeling that my group is a small group. There's 3 of them, but they don't leave this area because I don't think they want to go into the other areas. It's like they have this area here, and that's it. And if I show you on a map, Will, it's a small area. It's very small.
Okay. How about you, Nate? Talk about your 2 groups.
What I gather from mine now, what I have the group in the valley, and then I've got the ones outside the valley. The outside the valley groups are the one that shows more aggression. And just like Don said, now me and my wife went across the night before we went camping. We went across to, so I can go across the road from my house and walk right into the woods there, and in 250 yards, I'm to the waterfall going off into this valley, a permanent water source. We started into the woods the night before we went down there. In fact, I almost canceled the camping trip if Jay hadn't went, because this the first time they ever made me feel this way. But we went into the woods. We went probably 25 yards into the woods, and I heard a loud crash in the same place below this old pond where I usually hear the screaming. And it wasn't but just a few minutes, I start hearing two separate creatures moving towards us, and every now and then you'll just hear them brush against something or step on something and break it. They were moving quiet. And I just got a real, like Don said, just a real uneasy feeling. I told Kathy, I said, look, we need to move on back out of here. And we turned and started walking, and the two that were moving up on us when I turned around, that put them on our right, and they were moving around us like they were moving to cut us off from going back out of the woods. But they were moving quiet, and it scared Cassie. She was almost, I said, don't you run. I said, stay right here with me. And we made it out of the woods. And as soon as we made it out of the woods, the loudest wood knock I've ever heard in my life, it sounded like a rifle. I tell you what it sounded like. It sounded like at a baseball game when they hit the ball and it breaks the bat. That's what it sounded like, and it just echoed. It was a frustration.
I got a recording like that from our people up in Washington State. I'll have to send it to you. Then I'm sure you'll agree that it sounds very similar to what you heard.
Yeah, and that's funny. That's how I had my first sighting, was when I was stepping out of the woods, coming home on those days. I was hearing a big snap behind me in the woods. It's always when I left the woods and got on the grass in front of my house. As soon as I stepped out of the woods is when I would hear it.
Well, that night I felt like their intentions was not good at all.
No, they were telling you to stay out.
Yeah, this is the group that I have not been dealing with all these years. These are the ones with the new behavior, the ones that are getting closer to people. Now, where my friend's mother lives is about 5 miles across several roads, major highways, from where the other two, the two groups that I've been dealing with. So this could be yet a third group. This is nearer to the place that I had my first encounter.
Right now, Nate, you had another thing going on too, Nate, with the fires. Now, you had fires in your area that actually displaced black bear to your area, right?
Yes. Well, what it was, I live probably 200 miles from Gatlinburg, Tennessee. That would be southwest of Gatlinburg. Well, I guess it was probably 18 months ago now. I'm not sure of the time. They had forest fires up there, which is something we don't have a lot of on the East Coast. But they had forest fires up there that almost destroyed the city of Gatlinburg. It just destroyed a lot of acreage. And about the same time that I started getting the other behavior and believing there's other groups here or moving in here, was about the time that people started seeing an abundance of black bears. Now, we've had them in the past move through. Somebody might see a black bear every 20 years. And then all of a sudden, we've got 15 or 20 sightings of black bears in 2 months. So, and about that time is when I started getting this other behavior. Now, I'm assuming whatever's over by my friend's mother has probably been there a while, because like I said, that's the same area where I had my first encounter. And there's still a lot of wilderness there. A lot of it. And there's several coves. They call them coves, but what it is, it meets the river. It's just a valley coming off the river, and there'll be peaks or mountain ranges between each cove. And I've had people all out through about 3 coves back that way along Tennessee River that has had sightings. Had one guy, him and his dad, had some rocks thrown at him. A lot of things like that. And I'm assuming that they have been there for a long time. The new group that I think has moved in was the ones I was dealing with at the Malones. I think they've killed some stock. I think they've stole some chickens out of a chicken coop. And they're a general nuisance.
That's a fairly aggressive group.
Yeah, and they don't care who sees them. Or I say see, they don't care who hears them. My wife has seen them. Leslie Malone's seen them. The only time that one of them has allowed me to see it, I was up to Malone's and I walked down. There's a pine thicket that makes a horseshoe in the Malone's. They used to have horses in this lot, and outside their fenced-in area, it's a thicket. But, you know, on the inside, it's pretty clean where the horses keep it clean. And I made a round around their fence and came back out the gate and turned around and I scanned with my spotlight. I didn't have thermal or nothing then. I scanned my spotlight. I see eye shine. I see one eye, and I think it's, I looked at it for a while. I've decided it's probably a drop of dew in a cobweb or something. And then it moves, and I see both eyes. So I stood there watching it for a minute, and it turned to, it would have been its right, and started back into that thicket, and then it looked back at me like it wanted me to follow it. Of course, I didn't fall for it. I'm still here. But that's the only time that they have allowed me to see this particular group. Now, the group in the valley paid me very little attention. It's like they go on and do whatever they're doing, whether I'm there or whether I ain't. And they don't.
I have a question for Will. Will, would a group push another group out of an area?
Sure.
They would, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you get one group that's especially more dominant than another one, and they want a particular area, they'll push the lesser dominant group out.
Okay.
Well, I think my dominant group is actually the lesser of the lesser aggressive group. The ones in the valley seem to be pretty well. These others don't bother them. I have seen no evidence of these others in the valley, so that tells me they don't go there. And if they don't go there, there's a reason for it, and that would be, to me, that would mean the ones in the valley would have to be the dominant group.
Now, what group would make the noise if they were being pushed out, Will? Would they both be making noise, or would it be one over the other?
You're probably going to hear both groups making noise, but they're going to be different.
Right.
Well, that's what I think. The blood-curdling scream, that has been a sound that I've heard here all along. A lot of the calls that the ones that Don sent me, some of those are could be accredited to either one because they've been around a while, but some of them were just indigenous to the Malone incident, if that makes any sense.
Some of the calls, the vocals you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Some of the vocals are indigenous to the Malone incident.
Yeah.
And some of them are calls that I've been hearing for a long time.
And those vocals are going to be group specific, just like with other apes and stuff. If they're doing something in conjunction with a particular place or people or animals or whatever, they might make those particular sounds just for that one, as means of identification, to other individuals that's where they're at and what they're doing.
All right. Now, I'm noticing this group here is changing their vocals each year, especially the vocals towards me. They change them up. This year I didn't hear any real coyote. This year it was mostly the scream and the hoots. That's all I really heard this year. Now, another thing that happened this year is we got rain around here. So that drought we were having around here, a lot of the streams filled up. And I don't know if that's why it got so quiet around here. Some of the other groups may have moved away, but I really think the drought brought in a couple groups to the ponds around here, because it really was the only fresh water in the area. But since we got the rain, it got quiet this year, and I don't know, maybe last year they were being loud because there was another group out here closer than they should have been, you know.
It could have been, a little competition over the water, and now they don't have that competition, so they spread out.
And they spread out. Yeah, that's the feeling I'm getting, because out back behind the ponds this year, I went out there a few times. I didn't see any sign, but I didn't get any bad feelings out there, and I heard birds and wildlife wherever I went. And it was always different before. Very quiet and dead, like a dead area. But it seems different. Oh, go ahead, Nate.
That's the way it was tonight when I went overseas. My friend's mom, and that's the question I got for Will after I say this. My friend's mom left some turkey scraps out on her porch for me to pick up. Well, she wanted somebody to pick them up for their dogs, and I went and got them off her porch. I didn't need them, but I didn't want them on the porch, considering something had done got cat litter off her porch. Mm-hmm. But do you think, Will, that they would, the whole cat litter thing, is that something they'd do?
Well, that's kind of unusual, I guess. I mean, I'm hoping they're not using that as some form of almond roca, but...
Well, that basically was my question, because there was no, I mean, there wasn't a piece of that bag anywhere.
But I'll tell you something now. It sounds kind of gross, but animals will eat other animals' feces.
That's
dog.
The point I was.
Yeah, my dog used to eat my cats all the time.
That's the point. I've never seen a dog that wouldn't eat cat poop.
Now, whether a Sasquatch would do it or not, I have no idea.
Well, that was sort of my question. Right. I mean,
you wouldn't think they would need to go that route.
Well, that was I just didn't know, because there was the bag was just gone. And it shook her up pretty bad. I mean, she said something came on my porch and got that bag.
Now, if a Sasquatch took it, it could have been out of curiosity too. It's really hard telling.
Right.
But do you think she has anything to be concerned about? Because this is a regular occurrence when she goes out it's got to where she won't go out on the porch hardly at all. But when she goes out, she gets growled at and roared at. And that's what she calls it. She says it's a roar, and it's nothing I've ever heard before.
Yeah.
When we were down there,
I'd be concerned about it.
Yeah.
When we were down there the other night, me and her son, and he goes out with me some, and my wife, and him and my wife heard the close-up growl. And I've got it, now I had my earphones on with the parabolic ear. So I'm hearing a lot of stuff that I can't, I'm getting so much stuff that I didn't single out this growl when it happened. They did. And he called me night before last. There was something on the Travel Channel about the legend of Boggy Creek. And he called me, he said, and I was outside, he said, put your TV on the Travel Channel. He said, that's what I heard at Mom's. And, of course, I was right there beside him. I was 3 feet from him when he heard it. And I'm sure that I heard it, but I was just hearing so much other stuff, too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm hearing things 2 and 3 miles away, and he's not hearing that. He's just hearing what's right there close. So you think she's got something to be concerned about?
I would watch the situation closely, because that's not a good sign.
Well, I have put all my other stuff on back burner because of this. That's sort of what I thought.
Put some lights up.
Yeah,
put some lights up.
Oh, she's got it lit up like a runway. She's got lights on every corner of her house, and she's got a little garage building. Her it looks like Dodger Stadium when she's got all them on. But where she's getting roared at from is probably 75 or 80 yards behind her house. There's a fence row. And you cross that fence row and you go into some woods that goes all the way back to this place, Greenbrier Cove, where I had my first encounter, and it ain't nothing but wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
It's owned by logging companies and paper companies, and that's all they do. They log it and then let it go.
Nate, didn't you have one watching you too at your house? Like, yes. I know that there was one always watching me here, and did you know if it was a juvenile or an adult?
I don't know what it is and how I know that or why I think this is happening. Where I live between 3 roads. There's roads all the way around my house. But the woods where all the activity begins is just right across from my house. My wife can go out and feed our cats or feed our horses or feed our dogs, and she won't hear anything. I can be outside 5 minutes, and I will hear a vocalization across the road. And it doesn't matter what time I go out. Because sometimes I may feed my cats at 7 o'clock at night, and I may feed them at 10 o'clock at night, depending on what I've been doing or, when I have time. But I can be out there 5 minutes, and it's like they're letting, hey, he's outside. We don't know yet what he's fixing to do, but he's out here.
I get that too. All I have to do is step out, and all I have to do is clear my throat, and they know I'm out there, and they'll give a vocalization. But this year, it's always the same. It's the scream and the hoots. I have that more than anything this year.
Yeah. Tell us, what do you think draws them to your locations?
See, to me, I think they know that I'm not a threat. I think they just, on some level, they feel safe there. And they also find me something curious about us. I don't know. And obviously I'm still a threat. I know they're out there, so they know that. But
what draws them to my area is everywhere that I have them, except for the group that has the whole Malone incident. Everywhere else is it has seemed to be a permanent place for them, although they may move some, but it's all connected wilderness with permanent water source, permanent shelter, and abundant game. The two places over by my friend's mom's and right here in this valley, there is no reason for them to ever have to go anywhere else. And in this valley, and I credit it to them, but there's all kind of weird legends and tales of what the old folks used to tell about this valley. And I credit those stories to them, but nobody goes there. I'm the only nut job that goes down in there messing around.
Right. I think it's because they know that me and Nate have seen these creatures. And I think it's just because we know that they're there, and I think that's why they really do watch me. Because I'm in their area. I'm in their hunting area. So they really do have to watch me. I mean, if I ever decided to go out to go after them, I know where they are. I know they're in this area.
Here's a question for you. Oftentimes I used to see up around Mount Rainier. I'm originally from Washington State. And right at hunting season, the deer and elk would come close to towns and where hunting wasn't allowed. And it was always the joke, you'd never see the deer or elk until hunting season, and they'd all be near the towns. Right. Do you suspect that these two groups of Sasquatches in your respective locations are staying closer to humans, i.e. the two of you and people close to your homes, possibly out of fear of the more aggressive groups?
Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, I used to always think that, Will, that's why they hung out close to the homes. It's kind of like like you said, the way the deer do. I have the deer. I have grouse. It's hunting season up here right now, and there are so many grouse around my house. I have crabapple trees, and they just hang around my house. The deer hang around here, because I don't hunt up here. So they know it's quiet here, and they see me out there, and I don't bother them. But I thought that same thing, Will, that they were hanging close to the people to stay away from the larger groups.
That could be. I think the more aggressive group here are the ones that have moved in lately, and I say lately, the last 2 to 3 years, because the non-aggressive group that I seem to be where they've always been.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to have moved. I mean, they're doing what they've always done.
Right, and that's
they're
the
reacting the way they always have.
Right, that's the same thing with my group. It's my groups never left. Even after I saw them, they never left. They stayed here.
Right. Well, off in this valley, seldom does anybody go there. And they can be there and be who they are or what they are. Most of the time, I mean, the only people that every now and then some of the property owners may venture off down in there, but not often, because most of them are afraid of the area. Yeah. They're afraid of what the old folks used to say. They're, this new group that has seemed to have moved in, they're the ones that don't seem to care. They're more brazen. They're more in your face with what you do. I mean, they're not out there trying to make themselves known, but when it does happen, they don't change what they do because people know they're there.
Right.
Will, both of y'all know a little bit about the situation at the Malones. They almost harass these people.
Mm-hmm. Right. One other thing about the deer, what we were just talking before I forget, the creatures that are around here, maybe that what I think is non-aggressive is they can't be aggressive, because if they killed my dog instead of hanging her up in a tree, I would have gone out after them. If they would have attacked anybody, these creatures in this area, they wouldn't be able to live in this area. So they would have to go out into the areas where the other creatures are.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the reason they're so non-aggressive, is they can't make any problems for themselves.
And all of these creatures know that humans are dangerous. At least that's their view of us. So that was the reason for my question.
Right. Right.
Well, listen, fellas, we're running short of time. I think we need to pick this up again at some point.
Okay. I have one other thing that
go ahead, Don.
Nate texted me a month ago, and I think he asked you this too, Will. He asked me about the silence that is heard in the woods sometimes. And he asked me if it had anything to do, if I thought it had anything to do with these creatures. And I've experienced that silence a few times. This year I experienced a real weird event out in the woods, where it sounded like something was running around me in circles all around me in the woods. But when I looked up top and I could see the leaves at the top of the trees blowing around, I couldn't hear them. I could only hear what sounded like something running around me in circles, like a bunch of animals running around me in a circle. And I think I was caught in like a little mini tornado. I think it was something like that caused my silence. But I do, and on the other hand, I do have recordings of the creatures doing their vocals with crickets and other bugs going on at the same time.
Well, I can tell you, and this is from personal experience, back in 1976, it brings me back to one very specific instance. And I've heard, been out in many places in the forest up and down the coast where it was dead silent. But I couldn't say for sure if it was Sasquatch related, although we do hear that a lot with encounters. But a specific situation was we had 3, possibly 4 of them around our camp one night. We saw them, we heard them, a lot of vocalizations, and there were a lot of tree frogs. And when they would come in, they would stop on one side, and as they moved around us, the frogs everywhere would stop. So, and it was dead silent. So, I mean, I have experienced that in direct conjunction with these things.
You have, okay. Yeah, see, I I don't know. I've experienced it way in the back of the ponds, but I never saw a creature or anything. I just got weirded out and left the area. I don't know if anything was there, but with this group around me now, it doesn't seem to happen because you can hear these things walking through the woods, and the squirrels are going off, the chickadees are doing their alarm, the blue jays are doing their alarm. You know, all the alarms of the animals are going off.
Right.
You know, I don't know. Maybe it's a different presence with a different type. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. Well, that's a different question altogether.
Right. But yeah,
believe it or not.
Oh, go ahead, Nate.
Tonight was the first time when I went over and got those turkey scraps. Was the first time I ever experienced dead silence. While I was there getting those turkey scraps, I walked around with my thumb a little bit, and it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck because it was so silent.
Right.
Yeah. I have heard that a few times, but I don't know. I've heard it not just here. I've heard it where I grew up in the woods down in the Hockomock Swamp. I heard it in all the woods I've been in. I can't say that it's a creature, though, that does it, you know?
Right. It's pretty hard to put your finger on it unless you've got some direct correlation like we did in that camp that night, but...
Right. I mean, even a big cat, a big mountain lion's going to keep things quiet in the woods, too.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
I think a presence of a predator oftentimes does that. Listen, fellas, we got to wrap it up. We're out of time. I really think we need to pick this up again because it's a great comparison with things you guys have going on in both your areas, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking, you know, back and forth. I think a lot of people don't understand. In many cases, there's a lot of similarities, and for a real living creature to exist, in this case the Sasquatch, then behaviors, not just physical characteristics, but behavioral characteristics have to be similar, you know, and you guys are far enough apart where we see these similarities, many similarities in these behaviors.
There is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple more. Me and Nate are going to have to talk about. I know there's a couple more things we've talked about.
Yeah, we'll
have to put our heads together.
Yeah. You guys chat, and then we'll definitely plan on doing this again soon.
Okay. Well.
All right, fellas. Listen, you guys have a good night, and I appreciate you coming on very much.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, enjoyed it.
You have a good night, my friend. We'll talk to you in a day or two.
Nate, Don, you guys have a great night.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
All right, we'll see ya.
Thanks, everyone, for joining me this week. Be sure to tune in again next week as we explore another account from a witness of the unknown.